I've experienced very special spiritual masters who have also attended my classes, such as Patty Shumway, John Butler, Ron Mills, Kathy Miner, Aria, and Arjidawa Amu. The following is something very personal about me. A dozen years ago, I was in the middle of demonstrating and teaching a live, hands-on class, and as usual, I was bringing the worst cases I could find out of the audience to demonstrate on. I usually have at least one person show up who has a visionary gift, and some can see more than others. This particular audience included several people who could see etherically. Some can just see energy, while others can see much more. Well, they share some of the things they can see sometimes. Some of them said that watching me work is an amazing show for them, etherically. And some have said if I could see what was happening, I would be too distracted by it. Again, the following is a very personal story, and I'm making myself vulnerable to criticism by sharing it, but I've decided to share it anyway. I've been through so much, I just don't take any criticism personally anymore. One of the women I brought up on stage had a lot of pain in one of her legs, around the lower hamstrings and behind the knee. As soon as I placed my hand where she said the pain was, I was running off stage, hacking up mucus out of my throat, and she said he took it on himself. I'm pretty sure the woman who came up on stage had been told what it really was she was dealing with, because of the caliber of people who were able to see everything, and because of her instant reaction. He took it on himself. Where did she get that from? I'm pretty sure she knew much more about what it was she was really dealing with, but she wasn't up front with me about it, and instantly her pain was gone, and I was running off stage. Well, at the same time, I wasn't consciously intending to take anything on myself, but with hindsight, looking back, I still think I must have signed up for it, because it ended up being the beginning of opening up a whole new world for me. I know there are enough people in the audience who saw what really happened, but didn't dare speak up to me or the entire group about it, but were privately discussing it with each other, because I had just been under a very serious attack which was beyond my capacity at the time. Some of you may think I'm talking a bit crazy, but I have to tell you my story anyway and trust that you will just do your best to understand me. Soon after this initial incident, I intuitively knew that I had been bugged. I knew someone was listening. It gets even creepier because soon after that, I knew I was also being watched. This made me feel very uneasy because I'd never experienced it before and really never talked to anyone else who'd been through anything like it. Well, as I continued to travel around, mostly through the United States and Canada at the time, I started to get feedback from people who could see very clearly. And some of these people were born seeing on both sides of the veil, like my grandmother. So at least I remember hearing about that from when I was young, but I didn't know if my family was pulling my leg or not, if they were joking with me or not. Well, as I began to ask more specific questions to those who could see, I began getting specific details of where it was located and what it looked like. All I knew is I could really sense it. There are some creepy details which I won't burden you with, and I wouldn't have believed it myself if it weren't for the fact that the same description came up from several different people who are located in different parts of the world who had no way of knowing each other. So eventually, after several different witnesses, I decided it was fairly safe to take their word for it. The removal, I ended up asking several people to help remove the etherical implant, and soon discovered there were many more who could see it than there were people who could safely and effectively remove it. First of all, I asked a group of LDS missionaries to give me an Order of Melchizedek priesthood blessing. LDS is the appropriate acronym or nickname for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Even Jesus Christ had obtained the Melchizedek priesthood, but I went to the LDS temple and found a group of young missionaries as they had just come out of the temple. Well, I'm sure they gave it their best shot, but their blessing by itself showed no noticeable effect. At least I felt it didn't add to my problems, which is more than what I can say for some of my other experiences. One of the next people who I asked for help in removing the etherical implant gave me an experience with some of the most impressive-looking Lemurian crystal wands I've ever seen, with no noticeable positive effect. In fact, I felt the overall effect just fed the implant energy that made it much stronger. More importantly, I feel the person who did it wasn't at all the right type of person to obtain help from, because I received several reports from those with a visionary gift that not only did they not remove any bad juju, they actually added other very serious bad spiritual juju to what I was already dealing with. Unfortunately, I've discovered this to be a common theme for what is happening to most people who are looking for help from so-called spiritual masters. Spiritual healers are typically like anything else. There's various levels of empowerment and charity versus disempowerment, abuse, and greed. One of the next people who I asked for help from is a super cool person and very naturally gifted, but just not that experienced or developed. At least they could see it, which is more than what most people could do, and they seem to have some knowledge in removal of etherical snakes. This wasn't a snake, but they gave it their best shot and tried to just pull it straight out. We didn't know it wasn't supposed to be just pulled straight out, but unscrewed in a special way. So this attempt broke off a residual hook, which was much more difficult to remove later, and the overall effect was a failure as it was still very active after this. In fact, this type of etherical surgery initially left me with yet another wound. I was walking around with a huge hole in my energy field, which in turn left me vulnerable to other attacks, which I had no idea about. Initially, without the privilege of learning from a real master how to safely and effectively eliminate the advanced etherical implant, I had to suffer a bit through my own trial and error learning curve experience. And I can tell you, the wonderful purpose of having access to masters who've been through the suffering so we don't have to. The atonement of Jesus Christ is a perfect example of that principle. I can also tell you that my overall experience has shown to me that one truth does not replace another. I've learned to respect the various levels of gifts and talents that people have been blessed with, and which some have been blessed to further develop. It has shown me we really are meant to formulate our talents to bless humanity. I was determined to succeed, and after getting to know another rather gifted healer named Kathy Miner, who is also a licensed medical massage therapist and has a quantum healing bioscanner, she's also very spiritually gifted with some extra special skills. So I asked her for help and had a fabulous experience. The initial session with Kathy took about 2 hours, in which she deactivated and removed the bulk of what I was dealing with, which by that time had grown rather extensive. I'll spare you the creepy details. This was a major breakthrough for me, as nothing else had seemed to really help. I have a great appreciation for anyone who is even close to the level of Kathy. We had some follow-up sessions to see if she could clear the last thing left, which was the residual hook that had broken off earlier, and unfortunately, the difficulty was beyond reach at the time. Because it wasn't completely gone, the residual hook was still there, I could still feel its presence. But for the first time, I could no longer feel anyone listening or watching, which was a major accomplishment. How many of you have seen the movie 7 Years in Tibet with Brad Pitt? Well, it was a long and painful journey for him, but the blessings were very much worth it. My journey was sort of similar. It took me 7 years to find a Tibetan Buddhist Taoist Zen master with the right gifts and level of ability to remove the residual hook. A master who has also received a sacred heart transplant surgery from the Son of God, which also came with some duplicatable keys. Her name is Master Amu, and after about 30 to 60 seconds of preparation, she used a special spiritual technique that only took a split second to do, and I instantly felt the presence of the final residual hook leave. For the first time in 7 years, I felt completely clear of it, and it never came back. You may have heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. Some of the fastest and easiest things are also the most powerful things.